afternoon or good evening. I'm Hiroshi Ohta from Waseda University in Tokyo, Japan. First of all, I thank Professor Axel Klein and other organizers for inviting me to this conference. Today I'm going to talk about Japan's green transformations. The subtitle is How Far Will It Go? This study was supported by JSPS Kakenhi grant number JP21K01357. The content of my presentation is as follows. First, I'm going to briefly discuss Japan's green transformation policy, then bring about some critical reflection on this policy. After that, I turn to renewable energy potential in Japan, particularly focusing on solar and wind power. But Japan's renewable energy development is laggard compared with European frontrunners. So I try to explain by using certain analytical framework, particularly a combination of vested interest politics and historical institutionalisms. Then finally, I briefly introduce multi-level governance, focusing on local government initiatives, communities, and private sector initiatives. The last part is updated version while I'm remaking this presentation. First, green transformation policy. The genesis of this policy was the Suga Yoshihide's declarations of carbon neutrality by 2050s, and then ratcheting up the greenhouse gas emission reduction by from 26% to 46% by 2030. Let me get the laser pointer here. And then also try to solicit 150 trillion yen public and private fund in order to invest in new technologies. And this slide shows the Japan's source of CO2 emissions. Mostly comes from energy related, about 93%. And power sectors emit 40% of CO2 emissions in Japan. As of 2020, Japan was 6th largest emitters, followed by after China's, United States, EU, India, Russia. And the tenet of these GX policies was threefold: and emission reductions, stable energy supplies, and economic growth. In order to pursue this goal, 3 policy instruments was introduced during the Kishida administrations. And one of them is the roadmap, the basic policy for realization of green transformations. The other one is the law, act on the promotion of a smooth transition to a decarbonized growth-oriented economic structures. And then various amendments to the existing energy policies. One of the main feature of objective of this amendment is to allow the power companies to extend its operation nuclear power plant from beyond 40-year limits to farther, and even 60s and far longer. Having 3 policy instruments, a little bit more concrete strategies include: first, efforts to promote energy saving and mainstreaming renewable energies. Also, enhancing grid system, and then next generation solar and offshore wind facilities. And then for the first time after Fukushima nuclear accident, government policy stated clearly utilizing nuclear energies and replacement to next generation nuclear power plant, and then extension operation period of existing power plants. Other efforts include support the hydrogen and ammonia development. And then for the implementation side, government established a 20 trillion yen fund for GX economic transition bonds. And finally, Japanese government introduced carbon pricing policies. For example, emission trading system, but from 2026, and then auctions emission quotas by power producers, not including manufacturers, by the way, but also started quite late, 2033, and then carbon surcharge for fossil fuels in 2028. And then this is the rationale, same as the tenet of the GX policies. The investment decision by the private sector alone are truly difficult, then contribute to industrial competitiveness and economic growth and emission reductions. So the public fund 20 trillion yen, and then try to solicit private fund, and in total aiming at establishing 150 trillion yen. And further concrete policies on the energy supply side, planned allocation of 50 trillion yen, and for first renewable energies about 20 trillion yen, and then next generation networks enhancing the grid system, and then next generation innovative nuclear reactors, about 1 trillion yen. And then hydrogen ammonia development for 7 trillion yen, and then carbon recycling fuels 3 trillion yen, and carbon capture and storage about 40 trillion yen. On demand side, housing buildings about 14 trillion yen, and automobile and energy storage batteries about 34 trillion yen, and digital investment 12 trillion yen. And then for materials, iron, steel, chemical, cement, and paper, about 8 trillion yen. And automobile and digital investment is as same as above. And then zero emission ships, about 3 trillion yen. So overall pictures. So this is the overall pictures depending on the sector. Sector-wide, the targeted technological development, and I highlighted the largest share of this allocation of fund. Automobile at 34 trillion yen, and then renewable, including the floating offshore wind farms, 31 trillion yen. And please pay attention to this. The next generation innovative nuclear reactors will assign only 1 trillion yen. So I just wonder how serious the government is to develop next generation nuclear reactors. Even smaller than CCS, 4 trillion yen. And further breakdown of so-called the climate transition bond technological investment. Most of them is good, really aiming at accelerating decarbonizations like energy efficiency, renewable energy development, and then clean transportations, and then seeking environmentally sustainable management of living natural resources, circular economy, for example. However, some of them are not necessarily transition per se type of technologies. For example, next generation nuclear reactors is one of them, and then promoting zero emission thermal power plant, for example, gasification of coal, and then hydrogen ammonia, co-firing with coal power plants. They are not, these technologies not necessarily really accelerating decarbonizations. Quite dubious, I would say. So that's quite controversial. And another aspect of GX policy is to try to expand this transition financial economies to Southeast Asian countries. I think Japan should help the Southeast Asian countries to decarbonize societies, mainly because this is the center of economic growth in the world, and also population is still growing, and then they are heavily depending on fossil fuel. So this is very good policies for Japan to help them to decarbonize. But some of them is not necessarily really helping, kind of just extension of the Japan's dubious transition technologies. For example, using this fund, so-called transition economy fund, to transfer the transition technologies, including ammonia and then energy and CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. So METI concluded quite many memorandum of understanding with Southeast Asia countries and also Australian countries to pursue this the so-called zero emissions communities, Asia zero emission communities. I listed here 71. Because of time constraint, I will not go into the details about each project, but some of them is very good, developing wind powers, solar panels development, solar farms, but others quite questionable, like developing ammonia and hydrogen plants, and then seeking CCS site, storage site in the Southeast Asia countries. So some critical reflection on Japan's GX policies and diplomacies. So comparing before and after the introduction of GX policies, there's nothing especially changing, nothing particularly changing, particularly looking at the renewable energy side of policies and also the nuclear. Even though the policy paper stresses importance of mainstreaming renewables and also addressing energy security concerns, but nuclear target remains the same before and after, 20 to 22% in 2030s. No rapidly increasing renewable energy target still remains the same, 36-30% by 2030s. To contrast to the European countries, particularly after Russian invasion of Ukraine, EU as a whole tried to increase renewable target from 40% to 45% by 2030s. Even Germany, which heavily depending on the Russian gas, tried to increase the renewable energy 65% to 80% by 2030. I don't know, now it's quite, situation is quite shaky, but still much larger than Japanese targets. And another feature of this DX challenge and some kind of a critical point is that the promotion of construction and promoting development and construction of next generation nuclear reactors. So certainly it will not help contributing to the CO2 reduction by 2030 target. And another rather contradicting policy is longer life for nuclear power beyond 60 or longer. If I were the power company's CEO, I definitely choose latter options, longer life for nuclear power, because investing in future reactor is quite expensive, and then we don't know when it will be available. But for the short-term interest, I think extending the operation time of the nuclear power plant is much easier and less costly. Another feature is fuel levy and emission trading system was introduced, but I just said already it's too late and too insufficient. And another issues we should discuss is about hydrogen ammonia co-firing thermal power plant development. So METI says this is a breakthrough technologies. Okay? addressing both carbon neutralities and energy securities. However, even its own strategic energy plan, and this only 1% of electricity will be provided by this hydrogen ammonia co-firing thermal power plant. And then there's some policies to phase out inefficient coal power plants, but there's no mentioning target years for the phase out of all coal power plants. CCS, there's no explicit the target for its commercializations. And closely related to the issues of this the continue to use coal power plant is abatement policies of Japan. So in the world now, the abatement coal fire power plant is still becoming quite important issues. For example, according to the IEA zero emission scenarios, it should developed countries should phase out unabated coal-fired power plant by 2030. So this IEA's zero emission scenario referred to the IPCC 6 assessment report standards for abated coal-fired power generations. So standard is 90% now. However, the METI's strategic energy plan target is 20% for coal-firing ammonia in coal-fired power plants. And even though using ammonia and hydrogen coal-firing thermal power plants with CCS, METI's CCS target is to capture and store the carbon dioxide with only 2 to 12 million tons by 2030. According to the senior researcher of the Renewable Energy Institute, kind of energy think tank, 1 gigawatt coal-fired power plant emit around 5 million tons. So there's now 50 gigawatt capacities of coal-fired power plant in Japan. So simple calculation, 50 multiplied by 5 would be 250 million tons. But according to METI's target of storage of CO2 carbon dioxide is only 6 to 12 million tons. And on top of power companies, Japan still have a viable manufacturers, steel, oil refining, chemicals, cement, paper. Those industries emit quite lots of CO2s. So this 6 to 12 million tons capture and storage carbon dioxide is not enough. Then another issue quite international issues is the Asia Zero Emission Community Initiative. This idea started from May 2021. The government announced the Asia Energy Transition Initiative, aiming at a provision of a roadmap toward decarbonization in this Asia, exporting Japanese technologies, system know-how to Asian ASEAN neighbors particularly. So some of them is very good. US $10 billion will be financed to support renewable energies, energy efficiencies, cleaner fuel sources, and Japan announced various projects in these countries. And then 2 trillion yen, about $40 billion, Green Innovative Fund, part of green growth strategies to develop energy technology, mobility storage, ammonia and hydrogen and other other technologies to pursue decarbonizations in Asia. Then this policy was developed during Suga, and then Kishida tried to expand these ideas and tried to get the Asia zero emission communities. So April 2022, Japan signed 10 agreements It's Asia Green Growth Partnership Ministerial Public-Private Forum. For example, multi-year project on offshore wind development was signed with Vietnamese government, with Japanese companies, and another utilization of ammonia hydrogen between Japanese Itochu trading companies and then Malaysia's counterpart companies. And then Kishida participated the COP28. He mentioned the Asia Zero Emission Community Initiatives of Southeast Asia to seek regional cooperation through hydrogen ammonia co-firing technologies. Because of this, the policies, Japan received the Fossil of the Day award to lock in fossil fuel-based energy across the continent, delaying the transition from fossil fuels to renewable, adding hurdles to achieving the global goal of tripling renewables. Then Japan government hosted a G7 summit in Hiroshima and endorsed reducing global greenhouse gas emissions by around 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035 relative to the 2019 level. This benchmark is quite crucial for Japan. Mainly because the Japan's initial target and benchmark year is 2013, and then try to reduce the 45-6% by 2030s. But new commitment addressed during the G7 summit, and benchmark year is 2019. So that this red line is the new obligation for Japan. It's quite steep. 2030s by 43% and by 2035 60%. So Japan should make more effort than declared policy. And then following years, the G7 summit in Italy, Apulia, G7 leader reaffirmed the commitment to phase out existing unabated coal power generation during the first half of the 2030s. And then recommitted global renewable tripling target, global energy efficiency doubling target. But some countries, including Japan, recognize nuclear energy as a key component of zero emission. But however, trouble is this plan and expected coal retirement in G7 countries, except UK already phased out all coal-fired power plants, but rest of the G7 countries is trying to reduce and in the trend of declining trend in terms of coal power plants, but only Japan still increasing the coal-fired power plants usages. So tremendously, Japan have a tremendous obligations or effort required to achieve the phasing out coal power plant objectives. Okay, then I'd like to turn to the Japan's renewable energy potential. Japan introduced the feed-in tariff system 1 year after the Fukushima nuclear accident, and since then the installation of the solar panels rapidly increased, about 13 times the volume of 2012 as of 2022. And Ministry of Environment studied Japan has further potential. Even though Japan is narrow strip of the archipelagos, and then 67% of the land was covered by forests, and then highly populated areas, and in the flat land is highly populated, and already quite many mega solar farms was established. But still, according to the Environment Ministry studies, we still have a potential utilizing rooftop of the building and then land. So, for example, according to these studies, it's estimated the solar potential from building public agencies, hospitals, schools, single-family houses, factories, warehouses, other buildings and railways. You can use rooftop of those buildings, and the potential is total annual generation would be 598.5 terawatt hour. For utilizing land, landfill, general waste sites, arable land, rice field or fields, and then abandoned or overgrown farmland, reusable and unreusable land. If we utilize all these land, the potential will be 1,277 terawatt hour. Well, in total, annual generation will be 1,875.5 terawatt hour, which will be 2.3 times larger than the electricity consumed in 2023. So the more visualized presentation of this further utilization of the rooftop or land for the solar power is these are green, yellow one is the agro-solar sharing potentials, and then green area is other land use, arable land, and then abandoned overgrown farmland, and then abandoned overgrown and farmland unusable. It's still large potential. And then rooftop of the various buildings, 31.1%. So in total, we should have Japan should have more, can have more solar panel, solar power provisions. How about wind power? Wind power is gradual increase compared with the solar power. 2010s, and then compared with 2023, and about 2.2% times more the power generated by wind power. This, the unit is megawatt. But Japan has further potential. So the total estimated wind power potential in Japan, same studies done by the Ministry of Environment. And for the land, total annual generation would be, potential would be 1,262.473 kilowatt hour. Offshore wind for the seabed mounted offshore wind, total annual generation would be more over 1,009 terawatt hour. And then floating offshore wind, with total will be 2,451.6 terawatt hour. So a little bit more about the offshore wind power potential. So Japan was surrounded by sea, and then territorial sea, contiguous zone, and EZ. So the territorial at 12 nautical mile, and contiguous zone 24 nautical miles, and EZ 200 nautical miles. And another feasible studies which was done by the Renewable Energy Institute. Japan has quite huge potential. Particularly looking at the wind power or wind speed, and criteria is 7.5 meter per second and or higher. And then the depth sea level, depths of the sea would be from 50 meter to the less than 200 meter or 300 meters for the EZ. So for the fixed bottoms, and then wind speed of 7.5 meter per second or higher, and their potential is 176 gigawatt. And for the offshore wind power, territory and contiguous zone area, and having 8 meters per second wind speed and or higher potential, and then sea water depth will be 50 meters or more, but less than 200 meters, 542 gigawatt, and then territorial sea and EZ wind power is 8.5 meter per second or higher, and then water depth is 50 meters or more or less than 300 meters. You cannot see this one, but potential is 592 gigawatt hour. And so the government is particularly under the GX and previous policies emphasize the importance of developing offshore wind power by introducing the law or enacting law, the Act on Promoting the Utilization of Sea Area for the Development of Marine Renewable Energy Power Generation Facilities, so-called Renewable Energy Sea Area Utilization Act, enacted in 20 and 19. So that for 30 years, the companies or local community can use this sea area for the wind power generations. So the 10 promotion zones were selected already. 17 sea areas are in the preparatory stage of designations. And already tried to start constructions. And then round 1, this is 1.7 gigawatt, and round 2, 1.8, round 3, 1 gigawatt. So now, these blue areas, or the areas selected for the construction of floating offshore wind power, and already auction was done, and Mitsubishi Shoji trading companies won this bid. So Goto, Nagasaki Island here, and then Noshiro and Yuri Honjo is Akita, all Akita here. Yuri Shinjo is here, Oga and Noshiro, and then Choshi here, Chiba prefectures, and some other was coming selected. And those Akitas and then Choshi areas are already contracted, and then they're about to start the construction. But still some kind of a problem occurring because of the cost of materials going rising because of this demand is very large demand, and also the depreciation of yen making the companies difficult to start constructions. They still try to figure out how to start construction. But anyway, so this area has already signed, and then contract is done, and then waiting for the constructions. And meanwhile, the government also tried to reinforce or build the new grid systems in order to provide those electricities generated from the wind power. And these are the master plans of the government. Okay, then how about the current state of renewable energy development? But still, the huge room for Japan to develop, particularly comparing with the European countries. Green area is renewables, and black area is coal and natural gas, oil and nuclear, and other waste. The divide of this nuclear energy and other fossil fuels, and fossil fuel is still dominant in generating electricity, cost 70%, more than 70%, And then nuclear is 5.6%, and renewable is 21.7%. And breakdown of the renewable is the solar is largest, 9.2, hydropower 7.6%, and bioenergy 3.7. I'm sorry, and then wind only 0.9%, and geothermal 0.3% as of 2023. So the Japanese renewable energy development is very steady, but not accelerated compared with other countries. So why? Why is that so? So the brief argument, I'm going to introduce a brief argument of this one here. So one of the main argument is that the context of techno or industrial complex consisting of energy manufacturers and transport industries fueled by fossil fuels. This complex system evolved through the positive feedback processes. For example, the internal combustion engine and subsequent development of transportation means such as automobile co-evolved with private and public infrastructure, including road, gas stations, facilitated by relevant public policies. So that this techno-institutional lock-in industries, lock-in hinders the emergence of the alternative technological development, including renewable energies. So the positive feedback in the form of the passive dependence and lock-in situations that are difficult to reverse. And so the development of vested interest quite strongly resists to radical change in the existing energy system. And so that Japan is now carbon lock-in, where powerful vested interests oppose ambitious climate and energy transition. So the politics of vested interest still have explanatory power, particularly these energy sectors, not other sectors in Japan, particularly information and technology and some other AI or other more advanced technological field. But this energy sector still, the vested interest politics still having a strong grip on controlling this business. So this incumbent still very old theory, but iron triangle, some say iron pentagon, still controlling this business. The ruling party politicians, power companies, energy-intensive industries, labor unions, Japan Business Federation, Keidanren, and Metis and And, having very strong policy coalitions. And then Japan thick embedded in extreme import-dependent energy industries, particularly two oil crises in the 1970s, pursued for the diversification of from oil through coal and nuclear, natural gas, combined with emphasis on increased energy efficiency. And then 3E plus S is Metis energy policies, energy securities, efficiencies, environment, and safety. So energy security framing is very strong, manifests as a major obstacle for alternative development paths. And another twist is this cross-sectoral opposition within the ruling party and opposition party to ambitious climate change and rapid energy transition, so-called double representation of carbon polluters. In case of Japan, Federation of Electric Power Company of Japan, close to LDP and Metis, and then Federation of Electric Power Industry Workers Union of Japan, Dendok Soren. This is a political support body for the Democratic Party of Japan, DPJ. And but now DPJ is split into the constitutional democratic power and also Japan, and then the National Democratic Party. And recent the elections, National Democratic Party won quite large. This increased the seat 4 times its parliamentary seat, and then now is about to seizing a casting vote because LDP became a minorities and not majority ruling parties. So the coalition government with LDP and Komeito is weak. So, but National Democratic Party having very strong say, and then these parties have strong voice for pro-nuclear power, and then utilization of the ammonia and hydrogen coal-fired power plants. So now it's quite twisted here. Double representation of carbon filters really explain the situation today. And then, as you might know, this METI is much stronger than Minister of Environment. And then climate change policies, the kernel of this policy is energy policies. So certainly the METI is still leading in the energy policies and then influence the climate policy too. So this is the situation. So I would say my argument is that combination of politics of vested interests with historical institutional perspectives explain the current situation. This is my argument. And then, but Japan's GX policy remained halfway and maintaining the nuclear target intact and then renewable, relatively low renewable energy target. So how to explain its and the tenacity of the vested interest or inertia, a structural impediment, or what? I would say still the vested interest politics still explain. So this is the community member under the of the Strategic Policy Committee. It's quite important committee under the auspices of Minister of Environment. METI, and particularly Agency of Natural Resources and Energy. And before the cabinet decision of 6th strategic energy plan, most of the committee members is pro status quo, pro nuclear, and then continue to use thermal power plants, and only one of 2 is advocate of renewable energies. And then this is the committee members before the during the deliberation of the green transformation policies continue to be dominated by status quo. SQ stands for status quo. And then for the 7th new, currently deliberating the 7th strategic energy plan, again, most of them, the majorities of the committee member is nuclear power plant advocate. And I read some of the discussions, and very strong voice for the nuclear options is crucial for decarbonization policies. So this gist of the main point of the of 7th Energy Strategy Plan. This was the updated version of my presentations, and this was draft paper was publicized December last year and 17th, and then new energy strategy deleted the phrase reducing the dependence on nuclear energy as much as possible. It replaced it with not to depend excessively on particular energy and fuel source, and then maximize the utilization of nuclear and renewable energies. And so the comparing having sixth and seventh energy strategies. Yes. So the energy mix target under the sixth strategic energy targets, oil was 1%, coal 19%, energy 20%, nuclear 22%, renewable 30 to 38%, and hydrogen and ammonia 1%. The actual energy mix as of 2022, oil and waste 8.2%, coal 30.8%, natural gas 33.7%, nuclear 5.6%, renewable 21.7%. So energy mix target under the seventh strategic energy plan. This is still draft. Thermal power about 30 to 40%. Nuclear is about 20%. Renewable 40 to 50%. Nothing so much, different. This is about target for 2040s. But there's no breakdown how much coal will be contributing to this thermal power. And then nuclear is still 20%. And then renewable is not so much ambitious compared with other countries. Okay, then finally, I'm going to try to briefly about multi-level governance, introducing local government and community and private sectors initiatives. So Japanese government has been kind of developing quite many local government initiatives led by METIS or the Ministry of Environment. For example, Environment Model Cities Program 2008, and the Environment Future Cities Program 2010, and then some cabinet secretariats, Sustainable Development Goal Future Cities. And the most current one is Ministry of Environment of the Recognizing Local Government Initiatives, so-called the Zero Carbon Emission Program. Quite many cities and municipalities and villages involved. This is the visualization of many projects. How about community initiatives? I think this Institute for Sustainable Energy Policies, this is the non-profit organization, has been promoting community power, solar, wind, community-based the generation of electricity. So as of 2016, they held this conference and then issued some principle, community power principle. The community power should be owned by local communities, and decision should be made by the local communities, and then benefit from this community power should be distributed among the community. And then there's some the power ledger, people's power ledger. It's kind of data should be annually, mostly annually, I think, issued. And this is one of the example using solar sharing and cultivating rice, and then from rice they're brewing sake, for example. This is a solar panel, and according to this according to this report, community generate in total 40,874 kilowatt hour, and then there are 802 community power, but still not enough, I guess, to really sufficiently provide all the communities. But this is good start. Then how about the private sector initiative? these are mostly kind of generated from external development, international divestment movements, for example, and also environment, social governance investment, and then TCFD, UN Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures movement, and RE Renewable 100. So Japanese companies really try to bandwagon this international movement. Otherwise, they cannot really do business in global market. But I think Japanese companies, some of them is really kind of strongly motivated to really address these climate change issues and try to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide. And so now, as of last year, November 24, 1,499 companies and other organizations become joint TCFD consortium in Japan. And then much more active companies belong to this Japan Climate Leaders Partnership. Now 252 members, and then 60 of them as members of the RE100. Okay, so finally, these are the main takeaway points. First, Japan's GX remain halfway, maintaining the nuclear and relatively low renewable targets intact. And I tried to explain this laggardness in renewable development decarbonization in Japan by refer to the aspect of historical institutionalism and vested interest politics. This is but applicable only, I believe, the energy sectors in Japan. But thirdly, Japan has enormous potential for development renewables. I just introduced, focusing on solar and wind power. And then finally, I briefly talked about local government initiatives and community power initiatives and the private sectors joining in the cause of the addressing the climate change policies. I hope that these bottom-up approach can accelerate decarbonization in Japan. Okay, thank you very much for your attentions, and these are some references.